Hello, Govinda Singh 984, Govlove 84 RO Voice NST Limited, and I just wanted to do a blog regarding history, World War One and World War Two, about Adolf Hitler. And I wanted to do this blog because of what's going on with Kanye West, who's been cancelled because of his views regarding Nazism, and I've been shadow banned on Instagram because of my views and my political posts regarding World War One and World War Two. So I just wanted to put this blog together to explain why I've come to this conclusion. In 1920, Adolf Hitler was a former soldier in the German army during World War I, and Germany were made to surrender on the home front in World War I in 1918. And you have to ask why, because Russia, who Germany were fighting on the Eastern Front, the Imperial Russia, Lenin from Russia signed a treaty to surrender from combat and resign from combat on the Eastern Front. So that's practically Germany undefeated. But then suddenly, for the council in Germany, the Weimar Republic Council, say no, we can't support the army anymore, we have to stop this war. It's a bit fishy. So then World War I came to an end, and Hitler, he was still part of the army, I think, in the German army in 1920, but he left the German army and he joined the German Workers' Party in 1920. And in 1921 he became the leader of the German Workers' Party. Now he was very politically opinionated. He was very pissed off at the decision of the Weimar Republic and the Treaty of Versailles, I think it's the Treaty of Versailles, that's how you pronounce it, which surrendered Germany on the home front and made them cede territory that they had gained in Eastern Europe. And he would speak out against war communism, but when I've looked into it, it sounds like he's against war communism and the ideas of Marxist-Leninism, and he was against international capitalism. So this was what he was protesting in the 1920s. What happened is, it came to the point where they wanted to put things right for all those who died in World War I from 1914 to 1918, and didn't want them to think that their sacrifices were in vain because they had gained so much in Eastern Europe, especially to get Lenin to sign a treaty to surrender on the Eastern Front. They wanted to put things right for the army. And so in 1923, with the help of General Erich Ludendorff, who was a former general in the German army, the German Prussian army during World War I, they organized the German Workers' Party to march to Munich to overthrow the Munich government and protest against what they did in 1918, and that is the decision to make Germany surrender on the home front. So they want to overturn that decision. Thousands marched from the German Socialist Party and they were shot at by the Munich government, and 16 neo-Nazis died and 4 policemen died. And so you got to just look into it from, this is 1923. They've been shot at first by the Weimar Republic, the Munich government, for protesting against their decision to surrender Germany on the home front in World War I, and they've been shot at for protesting. Hitler was in prison for treason, and he spent just over a year in prison, and he was released in 1924. So from 1920, I want you to just imagine 1920 up until 1930, there was even a time where the Times magazine in America, New York, called Hitler the Man of the Year. So from 1920 to 1930, is there anything really shocking, absurd, monstrous, demonic about Adolf Hitler as a socialist activist? Not really. It just seems like normal socialism activism. It's protesting the decision that let the German army down in 1918 when they were made to surrender on the home front. He's protesting against international capitalism and war communism and the decision to make them surrender on the home front. So that's just normal activism. That's not like, oh, he's a monster, he's evil. He's just like a normal politician. You would say an equivalent to the British Labour Party socialist politicians. It's just normal activism. But something's happened in 1932 that the Zionist English and the Zionist Americans don't want to talk about. In 1932, because Germany were made to surrender territory on the home front, on the Eastern Front, because that was the part of the treaty of surrendering, Stalinist Bolsheviks from Russia they seized power. They made a purge into the Ukraine in 1932, and they call it the 5-year plan, the communist 5-year plan, where they looted Ukraine for agriculture, and this resulted in 10 to 20 million Ukrainians starving from hunger. And this happened in 1932, and so then in 1933, Hitler had rose to power, and he expelled Jews from Germany in 1933. And that's a year after the Holodomor Ukrainian famine. So that's definitely linked to what's now suddenly someone from 1920 to 1930 was just a normal socialist, politician, activist protesting against capitalism, communism. But now he's been turned into this raging, inhumane monster because 10 to 20 million people have died in Ukraine. But he's become a monster because we have to go back to 1918, and he's going to look at the Jewish community and say, it's you. You made a surrender on the home front in 1920, in 1918. If we were not made to surrender in the home front in World War I, and we were still in Eastern Europe, if the Stalinist Bolsheviks Jews wanted to attack Ukraine, the German army could have been there to repel and fight the Stalinist Bolshevik army. But they weren't there to protect the Ukraine because they were made to surrender and cede territory. So this has made him, in his psyche, a desktop leader. He's become a crazed madman. So when I learnt that, I'm like, well, he's been turned into a monster by those who made the decision to surrender Germany on the home front in World War I. That's what made someone who was a normal human being become a crazy, demonic, inhumane human being. So I just wanted to get off my chest. So it's like, Mao Zedong from China, the Communist Party of China, and Stalin, they were always monsters before, when they were young, to when they're older, they're just nasty fuckers. Hitler was a normal, you could say, socialist, equivalent to a British Labour Party socialist MP minister, who was turned into a crazy demonic monster because of a famine that happened in 1932, a famine he blamed the Weimar Republic, who made Germany surrender on the home front in 1918 for, because they could have repelled Stalin if the army was still there. So it's what I blame, what made him a monster. And this resulted in the Jewish Holocaust, where the German Workers' Party went ballistic and berserk against the whole Jewish identity. They're like, it's your lot's fault that 10 to 20 million Ukrainians died. So it's like, I have Jewish heroes from my childhood, like Fonzie, and like Jewish, like Sandy from Greece, Olivia Newton-John, and who else is there? The Big Bang Theory with Howard, and the whole, there's people who are, and I grew up with the House of Solomon Rastafari. So I wouldn't like to see people who I'm fond of from the Jewish community go through a terrible nightmare ordeal. But if they do go through that ordeal and are in nasty time, it's because their Jewish identity has been endangered. It's not the crazed neo-Nazi who's going to be held to account in the heavens for their actions. It's going to be what made this man, who would otherwise not be doing this, what's made him to do this. It's because of 10 to 20 million Ukrainians have died, and they needlessly would have not had died had the German army still been there in 1918. So the decision for people from the Jewish community to ultimately be put into harm's way from Zionist England and Zionist America. And we need to get things into perspective. This isn't a Hollywood movie, a Zionist Hollywood movie, where they sugarcoat everything and don't like to talk about what they do. In a Hollywood Zionist movie, World War I, World War II movie, they're just going on to the Western Front to attacking the Germans because the Germans want a white race and, Aryan race and fucking all this bullshit. When the reality is, the army that attacked the Western Front, the Allies, denied black people the right to vote in America. Black people and Mexicans were being lynched in America. They were exploiting and looting South America for her agriculture. They had colonized and looted Africa and divided Africa and were taking minerals and resources out of Africa. They had colonized under the British Raj India and were looting and extorting more than they should have taken out of India to fund their industrial revolution. They had colonized First Nations Canada and Aboriginal Australia. So this Allies army that attacks the Western Front weren't a multiculturalist, all live together army. They were a racist army. And then these racist allies went and attacked another, what you could call, who also have racist natures as well. So there's two racist armies fighting each other. So why have I come to the conclusion? Because of Subhash Chandra Bose Netaji, the Azad Hind Fauj Indian National Army, General Mohan Singh, Asha Sahej Chaudhary and Lakshmi Sahgal, the Indian freedom fighters who went to Germany, and Adolf Hitler granted them right to stay and right to protest and allowed them to have an Indian radio station called Free India. And I thought, you know what? We're being treated like second class citizens in India, we're being flogged, we're being looted. So it's like fucking much needed help. So yeah, that's the main reason why I've come to this conclusion. Whereas Kanye West, he's doing it for some fucking white supremacist kissing racist arse and shit like that. I'll fucking fight a racist, because I look at it more to do with the politics of what was going on at the world at that time, more than anything to do racial or religious issues. In regards to that sort of shit. But even though race and religion had a major part to play with it, I'm just looking at trade and security and who could have helped India. And that's it really, that's what I just wanted to get off my chest. So from 1920 to 1930, Adolf Hitler's activism is not shocking, it's not monstrous, it's not absurd, and it's not evil. It's normal activism, protesting against capitalism, protesting against the decision to make Germany surrender on the home front in 1918, protesting against communism. But in 1932 it became a monster because of a famine. And after that famine, 10 to 20 million people died and turned him into a monster, and millions of other Germans and Eastern European Nazis into monsters, where they lashed out at people they would have otherwise not lashed out at. So it's what's made them these crazed, deranged monsters. And that decision lies on Zionist England, Rothschild bankers and Zionist bankers in America who made Germany surrender on the home front. Now you have to ask the question, why did Hitler put thousands or millions of Jewish community into ghettos and made them work? Why did he have a sign saying work will set you free? Because it's clear those who died in vain from 1914 to 1918, including the 200,000 German Jewish soldiers and the 12,000 who died fighting for Germany in World War I, and all the other thousands who died fighting Imperial Russia in 1914 to 1918. All those who needlessly died but were stabbed in the back. So loot from Africa, India and South America can be shared with Jewish Weimar Republican bankers. Well, if you want that sort of money, you're going to have to work for it. Because one of the points in the manifesto for the German Socialist, for the National Socialist German Workers' Party, was ruthless confiscation. Ruthless confiscation, where they're going to ruthlessly confiscate what they've stolen. So it's like, there's not much to argue with them regarding World War II. They're going to say, well, they're going to devastate Germany, they're going to blitz it because this is what they'll do for their Jewish friends and all the Jewish Hollywood actors. So there's no point arguing with that, there's no point debating that. You're not going to win that argument or debate. Even if you think, well, you could have said, can you please leave the Jewish Socialist Association alone, those who supported Germany in World War I, and the 100,000 who fought for Germany in World War I, the 12,000 who died for Germany in World War I, can you please leave them alone? And then we'll support Germany's army against the Stalinists in Russia and give them support to fight the Iron Hands from Russia. But no, they blitzed the Western Front, and it's like, it's complicated. Yes, there's no point arguing with them regarding World War II, because they're just going to name all their Jewish Hollywood actors who they'll fight for in the trenches if they went through that ordeal. They won't take into account what's endangered their Jewish friends and their Jewish community's identity in regards to the Holodomor famine. All I'm going to say, if that's your reason for blitzing Germany and the right collapsing, and what happened to German women and Eastern European after that, after the right collapsed by the Stalinist Russians, well then that falls on your conscience, that's up to you lot. But all I want to know is, what was the Allies' excuse for attacking Germany in World War I, when 100,000 German Jewish soldiers fought for Germany in World War I and 12,000 German Jewish soldiers died for Germany in World War I? What was their excuse for attacking Germany then? There was no excuse, because Germany did nothing to Britain or America in World War I. What happened in World War I? General Erich Ludendorff and General Paul von Hindenburg, they had overthrown colonialists in Holland, in Belgium. And the colonialists in London, Westminster, were going to be next. So colonial Britain, Zionist Britain, the bankers, got all these soldiers throughout the Commonwealth who were like trained program machines, because the Zionist colonialists controlled finance and commerce throughout the world due to colonization, and so can put people wherever they want, like pawns on a chessboard, and made them fight their battles, not because the common man in England was in danger from Germany, but because the capitalist, colonialist, bulging back pockets were going to be overthrown and ruthlessly confiscated. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say. So that's Gavlov 84 R of OSNST. I'm Azad Hind Fauj supporter, and I'll leave it at that.